local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. The UNC system is facing some steep economic challenges with state funding as North Carolina struggles with its own economic crisis. Hannah Gage is the first woman to chair the UNC System Board of Governors. She's a former broadcast entrepreneur and now a strong leader and advocate for education. Hannah, I know how busy you are. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So you took the helm just before this whole economic explosion came to light. How did all this unfold for the university system?
Rapidly, but I think when I became chair, which was in June, we all saw a slowdown at that point, and one of the things I said to the board was that it's time for us to tap on the brakes and find a model that's affordable for our state. You fast forward from June 4 months, and the bottom fell out. Then the brakes were slammed on, and it unfolded first with Governor Easley announcing that in order to balance the budget, we needed to cut 6%, and this was all state agencies. It wasn't just the UNC system. These
That's
were
a big chunk of money, 6%.
A big chunk, but it was non-recurring. And so these were not permanent cuts, we thought. It was just to balance the budget through June of this year. Then the new governor came on and realized how bad things were and announced that we needed to work towards 7% cuts.
And we're going to sort of go into that a little bit more about how do you make what is going to amount to almost 15% cuts in your system.
Not really, though, because it was 6% just for this year, but then when the budget starts back, those disappeared.
I see.
So they're not cumulative.
I see. And just for our viewers to understand how the budgetary system is handled for the university, the General Assembly hands down some guidelines to the Board of Governors?
It comes, yeah, and we've been really lucky in the past. They've enabled us to have management flexibility, which means we decide how to make the cuts. They tell us how much. And so the president sits down with the campuses and they determine what those cuts will be. We set guidelines, but the Board of Governors is not involved in the detail.
All right, so the cuts that we're talking about, where are they likely to be made?
Everywhere. 7%, it's $175 million, and which is a lot of money. And 70% of our budget involves personnel, so there's great pain. I think you probably read that we will have larger classes. We will have less academic support. Faculty will be teaching more.
Technology
purchases will be put off. It's everything.
What about new buildings? There's been a lot of building on the campuses, especially here in Wilmington.
I think buildings that have already been funded will be constructed, but we're not going to get the funding from the General Assembly to construct anything new right now.
Well, how difficult is it to streamline 16 campuses, all different, diverse, with deep funding cuts and not impact the quality of education that the system offers?
I think the quality will be impacted. Our hope is that there, I think that we're trying to be optimistic, and everyone is hoping that maybe the cuts will not be as deep, that after the General Assembly gets into session and the stimulus money trickles down, that there may be some chance that it'll be a smaller cut, that they'll try to protect education. But if that doesn't happen, some things are going to suffer. And but we're a partner with the state. It's not just us. It's transportation, it's health care, it's everything.
All areas.
And we're going to do everything we can to protect instruction.
Well, what % of the funding for the UNC system comes from the state?
Oh, it varies. I mean, every campus is different. You have from 22% to 37%. On the larger campuses, it's not as much because they've got large endowments. They've got the research campuses have lots of money that comes in the form of overhead receipts for research from National Science Foundation, the NIH. So they're not as dependent on state funding as the smaller institutions are.
Has giving to the university suffered because of the financial crisis that we're in? Can you,
thus far,
you have
we
a handle?
haven't gotten any big reports about that. Obviously, the endowments have suffered. The existing endowments have suffered because they were invested
Right.
like everyone else. Everyone else is so. But you know, we have generous people, and the giving has not stopped.
You recently addressed the board you chair, the UNC Board of Governors, and there were, I think, the chancellors from the campuses were at this meeting as well. And you quoted the president of Ohio State University, who said, and I think we'll get it up on the screen, "This is the defining moment for universities as we know them. Universities must fundamentally reinvent themselves or go slouching into irrelevance." That's some pretty strong language,
it is.
Slouching into irrelevance. Why did you choose to use that quote?
Because this was a respected educational leader, and people listen to what he says, and I think what he sees is the reality that universities have not had to change a lot in 3,000 years. You still go to a central place to get your information, and I think what he was saying was we have to look at the model for delivering education. There are lots of ways to attain a degree, and we need to embrace multiple paths of doing that. They're not all reliant on bricks and mortar. And I think that I think that everyone has known that the delivery of online education had to be